February 2026, Indiana. Inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse, home of Pacers sports and entertainment's WNBA team, the Indiana Fever. The most thrilling period in the history of women's basketball is said to be just getting underway. Caitlin Clark is one of them. They are building a $78 million practice facility. Fans are gathered all around the block. Additionally, they currently have 3 players under contract. Michaela Timpson, Aaliyah Boston, and 3 Clark were the only ones left. The others were free agents and signed and waiting. Music, and 5 days ago, Kelsey Mitchell, the team's heartbeat, made a statement that ought to frighten every Indiana Fever supporter. She remarked, "It's scary." It's a direct quote. An 8-year veteran, a 3-time All-Star, described her future with the squad she has given everything music to as scary. What then took place? How did the most thrilling women's basketball team get to this point? 1 year, 2 words. 12 months ago, Indiana appeared to be a rising squad. Stephanie White, who had previously joined a team as a player back in 2000, had just been hired as head coach. This was White's 2nd time heading the squad and her 3rd overall. White had just finished being considered for 2 consecutive WNBA Coach of the Year awards at Connecticut. She was the greatest candidate for employment. Amber Cox, the COO and general manager, entered free agency with a bang. Dana Bonner, a 16-year veteran and 2-time champion. Natasha Howard, a former Defensive Player of the Year, returned. They acquired Sophie Cunningham from Phoenix through a trade. Kelsey Mitchell was retained on a Supermax contract. They were named free agency winners by ESPN and listed by WNBA.com. However, this is what everyone must deal with now, and what no one was expressing loudly enough back then. Each contract was for a single year. 1 year, Mitchell 1 year, Cunningham 1 year, Howard 1 year. Indiana failed to assemble a roster. One was rented by them. Additionally, the renting time has just finished. You must comprehend who has been in charge of this business for 40 years in order to comprehend what is going on in Indiana. The age of Herb Simon Music is 91. He is the owner of Pacers Sports and the Indiana Pacers. And Entertainment, the Indiana Fever, since 1983. Together with his brother Mel, he co-founded the Simon Property Group, one of the biggest real estate conglomerates in American history. Herb Simon is unharmed. He's a billionaire. However, Pacer supporters will tell you that having money and spending it are 2 different things. Additionally, Herb Simon spent decades demonstrating that Indiana will not cover costs that weren't absolutely necessary. The history of this song is recorded. Even though Indiana made 6 consecutive conference finals in the 1990s under the leadership of Reggie Miller, they were still unable to create something long-lasting. They allow the pieces to move. Music, they repaired rosters. Rather than flourishing, they only endured. Even bad were the Fever. Music, they were the WNBA's doormat for the majority of the previous 10 years. It wasn't because they didn't have enough supporters or because basketball isn't a popular sport in Indianapolis. Rather, it was because no one in charge was considering this squad as a significant investment. Then something altered. Music, a man by the name of Stephen Rales purchased a 20% share, Music, in the Indiana Pacers in 2023, giving him a voice in the team's future through Pacers Sports and Entertainment. Stephen Rales has a net worth of more than $11 billion. Together with his brother Mitchell, he co-founded Danaher Corporation, a multinational industrial and life sciences conglomerate that went on to become one of the most prosperous acquisition machines in American corporate history. Additionally, he established Indian Paintbrush, the film production firm responsible for Wes Anderson's Moonrise Kingdom, the Grand Budapest Hotel, and the Oscar-winning short film The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Stephen Rales is not a dabbler. He creates long-lasting structures. He was not persuaded to sit on his hands by the Pacers management. He invested in because he wanted to be a part of this franchise and knew what Caitlin Clark would mean for it. Here's the issue, though. A minority owner is Rales. The checkbook is still under Herb Simon's control. To be fair, there is a good reason why nearly every WNBA player signed a 1-year contract last winter. At the conclusion of the 2025 season, the league's collective bargaining agreement was scheduled to expire. In order to be in a position to sign a new contract that would eventually pay them what the market was producing, players sought to remain adaptable. That's clever. That makes sense. This is where Indiana's circumstances differ from those of any other team in the league, though. The biggest expansion in women's basketball history will occur during the 2026 WNBA season. This year, the Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo will both join the league. Two well-known teams are vying for players from the same free agent pool. An expansion draft is available. The CBA is stalled. Additionally, for the first time ever, the majority of the league's players are simultaneously unsigned. The majority of franchises entering this turmoil have at least a dedicated core. Minnesota is stable. New York has consistency. The team that defeated Indiana in October of last year, Las Vegas, had the foundation to withstand the uncertainty. Indiana. With 3 players and the CBA still unsigned as of February 2026, Indiana is entering the largest free agency scramble in WNBA history. Nobody can predict whether a lockout will occur. When the season begins, nobody knows, and Kelsey Mitchell is playing 3-on-3 basketball in Rhode Island while using the term scary. That is the result of renting rather than building. This is the question that no one wants to ask aloud. Last winter, if Herb Simon had been open to making longer-term commitments, if he had stated, "We want you here for 3 years, not 1," would any of these athletes have accepted less money in exchange for greater security? Would the current roster appear different? We're not sure. And that's the idea. Those offers were never made by Indiana. Let's take a moment to discuss the issues at hand. Because some viewers may believe that Indiana's front office predicament is only an inside baseball tale. It's not. This relates to one of the largest business prospects in the history of women's sports. The WNBA's numbers have changed as a result of Caitlin Clark. No WNBA game had averaged more than 1 million viewers since 2008 before to her first season in 2024. 22 games in Clark's rookie season went beyond that mark. 22. The WNBA All-Star for 2024. 3.44 million people watched the game on ABC. The most watched WNBA telecast in 30 years, dating back to the league's first season in 1997. Based on what Clark created, the league signed an 11-year, $2.2 billion television rights agreement. This is not a niche sport with room to expand. This commercial juggernaut is completely monetized. And the team at its core, the Indiana Fever, which is owned by Herb Simon and is part of Pacers Sports and Entertainment, has 3 players heading into its most crucial offseason. The math is done by you. Let's discuss the results of Indiana's 2025 one-year gamble. They went 20-24. Excellent. Not very good. In the first round, they defeated Atlanta. Next, they raced into Las Vegas in the semifinals, and it completely collapsed. Towards the end, Caitlin Clark was playing with an injury. There were 6 players out. Additionally, Kelsey Mitchell passed out on the court in Game 5 while Indiana was 1 victory away from the championship game. Later on, she explained it. Her muscles ceased to contract. Her legs became numb. She believed there was a serious problem. Rhabdomyolysis is the medical diagnosis. Her body had physically overreached itself. When the pressure mounts, that's how a team bound together by a year's worth of tape seams. Amber Cox, the general manager and COO, went on record in the aftermath. Resigning Kelsey is the top objective for 2026. Mitchell, does that sound familiar? Since that's precisely what she stated a year ago. Kelsey Mitchell will be given top priority, word for word. Same situation, same sentence. That isn't a strategy a year later. It's a loop. And now they're doing it once more in a league where the Toronto, Indiana has to rebuild from 3 contracted players up, while Tempo and Portland Fire are also entering the market in search of talent, as the expansion draft is depleting rosters. Mitchell, meantime, stated a few days ago that none of her teammates were certain of what lay ahead for them. She described it as frightening. She didn't say she was going to leave, but she also didn't indicate she was staying. An 8-year veteran of Fever, using the adjective scary, Stephen Rails becomes the most fascinating man at this point. In Indianapolis. Consider it from his point of view. He helped transform Danaher Corporation into an $11 billion industrial conglomerate through a leveraged takeover. He used Indian paintbrush to generate Oscar-winning movies. He understands what it is to make a commitment and see it through. He didn't purchase 20% of the Pacers to watch a one-year gamble come to an end. He is witnessing Indiana enter the most significant offseason in the history of a team. 3 players, 2 expansion teams vying for free agents, a frozen CBA, and a talented guard who claims the scenario is frightening. Stephen Rales doesn't consider one-year increments. That is not the way to amass an $11 billion fortune. You pledge. You make investments. You construct something that lasts longer than the transaction. However, he is not authorized to open the checkbook. Not quite yet. Kelsey Mitchell's return is not the question that Indiana is now facing. The question is whether 89-year-old Herb Simon is finally prepared to treat the Fever like the asset they have become under Caitlin Clark, or whether he will continue to do what he usually does: patch it, rent it, survive it, and hope no one sees. The most well-known athlete in women's basketball history is waiting inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse, home of the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark is under contract, confined, and unproductive. And a 3-player roster surrounded her. Stephanie White is a coach who has experience rebuilding teams and understands exactly what is required. A general manager in Amber Cox, who has publicly stated the priorities. An ownership structure where an Oscar-winning film producer and co-founder of Dana's corporation watch from the minority seat, aware that this time is fleeting. The math is easy. You have the most lucrative athlete in your sports history. The building is yours. The fan base is yours. The ratings are yours. This league is legitimate, as evidenced by your $2.2 billion television deal. And you have contracts with 3 players. The one-year gamble paid off for Indiana. They had a successful season, positive press, and a postseason run. However, you shouldn't continue to gamble just because you won. You eventually quit renting and start building instead. Herb, time is of the essence. For what length of time will you continue to rent?